"Caleb, run now. Don't let it get close to you, baby." Clara Johnson's scream cut through the thick southern air like a siren, sharp and desperate. Her hands flew open, garden gloves falling to the grass, as she bolted across the manicured lawn of the Whitmore estate. Her heart pounded so loud she barely heard her own breath. At the far edge of the lawn, 5-year-old Caleb Whitmore stood frozen, gripping a plastic toy, one of those bright, shrill things that squealed when you twisted it. The noise had been harmless to him, maybe even fun, but it had triggered something dark, primal. And now, the massive cane Corso, jet black and trembling with fury, was charging toward him like a bullet. Its growl was deep, guttural, not of this world. The same dog no one could train. The one that had sent 2 guards to the hospital. A gift from a powerful business partner overseas, wrapped in muscle and rage. No trainer had succeeded with it. Most wouldn't even try. Rumors whispered the dog had been beaten, starved, locked in crates, forced into obedience through fear. And now it trusted no one, lashed out at everything. No one until now. Clara dove forward just as the beast leapt. She grabbed Caleb with one arm, twisted her body, and took the full force of the dog's hit against her shoulder. The world blurred. Pain screamed through her back as she slammed to the ground, shielding the boy beneath her. The dog's jaws closed an inch from her ear. "Back, stay down," she shouted, not in fear but in command. The dog reared up for another strike, and then her voice dropped. Low, controlled, professional. "Down. Heel. Eyes here." I said, "Eyes here." Clara rolled onto one elbow, blood running down her forearm from a gash near the shoulder. She didn't move fast, didn't flinch, just looked the dog dead in the eye. The dog froze, confused. "Easy. You've been hurt before, haven't you?" she whispered. "Someone beat you till you didn't know your own name." It trembled. Clara lowered her eyes, kept her palms open, her voice soft but authoritative, exactly like she'd been taught in trauma response dog rehabilitation. Years ago. A different life. One she'd buried. "You don't have to protect yourself anymore. No one here's gonna hurt you. Especially not him." She gestured toward Caleb, who was now sitting upright, shaking silently behind her. The dog's breathing slowed, its head tilted. Then, like a soldier remembering its training in a war long forgotten, it dropped into a crouch. Growl gone. Teeth hidden. It backed away. Clara didn't move for a beat. Neither did anyone else. Then the butler rushed forward. 2 security men ran across the yard, weapons drawn. "Stand down," Elliot bellowed as he emerged from the patio door, his face ashen. "Guns down, now." He ran straight to Caleb and pulled him into his arms. The boy cried out, not from pain, but from sheer, paralyzing shock. "Is he hurt?" Elliot asked, voice shaking. "No," Clara said, breath ragged. "Just scared. He's okay." "You're bleeding." "It's just a scratch." Elliot turned to the dog. "That animal was supposed to be secured." "He was," someone muttered. "Chain must have." "Spare it," Elliot snapped, then turned back to Clara. "What did you do to it?" "I spoke his language," she said simply. He stared at her. Clara stood slowly, brushing off grass and blood, wincing as her left arm throbbed. The bite hadn't landed, but the impact bruised her ribs. The staff stared at her like she had just summoned fire from water. "That dog's not trainable," one guard whispered. "It came from a fighting pit. Don't you know? Boss kept it because his business partner gifted it. No one's been able to handle it. It bit a cop last year." Clara heard him. She already knew. Some scar don't show. She looked back at the dog now lying near the hedge, panting quietly. Its eyes followed her not with threat, but with something resembling submission and sorrow. Later that evening, Clara stood at the sink in the staff kitchen, holding a wet cloth to her shoulder. Outside, the world had settled into a Georgia dusk. Cicadas buzzed. Porch lights flickered on. Elliot appeared in the doorway. "Jacket off. Tie loose." He didn't speak right away. "I saw the footage," he said eventually. "You threw yourself between my son and that dog." "Yes, sir." "You could have been killed." "Yes, sir." He hesitated, then walked to the counter and leaned against it. "They told me that dog was broken," he said. "Beyond fixing." "He wasn't broken," Clara murmured. "He was hurt." and no one ever bothered to ask why he growled before biting. Elliot's eyes studied her face, not with disbelief but with recognition. A man who'd seen deals collapse over smaller misunderstandings. A father who'd just witnessed something terrifying shift into something holy. He nodded slowly. "What else have you been trained in, Miss Johnson?" Clara shrugged. "A little bit of everything. Enough to know pain in all its forms." And from the back steps, barely visible, the dog lay still, his head resting on his front paws, watching Clara, not with fear, not with hate, with something closer to peace. The next morning, Clara stood at the edge of the veranda, a fresh mug of coffee warming her palms as the southern mist hung low across the Whitmore estate. Her shoulder ached where the dog had knocked her down, the bruising sharp beneath her uniform sleeve, but she didn't mind. Pain was familiar, temporary, and for the first time in years she felt oddly needed. She sipped quietly, watching as the dog, still nameless to her, lay curled beneath the maple tree near the tool shed. Its massive body rose and fell in slow, rhythmic breaths, peaceful, but that peace was deceptive. A shallow stillness covering wounds no one had taken the time to understand. Behind her, the heavy oak door creaked open. Elliot stepped out, already in a pressed dress shirt and slacks, coffee in hand, eyes shaded by early sunlight. "He hasn't moved from that spot all night," he said without greeting. Clara nodded. "He's watching, still on guard." Elliot didn't respond right away. Instead, he studied the dog with a tense stillness of his own. "He was a gift," he finally said, "from a business partner in Dubai. A man who prides himself on loyalty and power. Said this dog came from a line of champions trained for protection, obedience, battle." Clara raised her eyebrows slightly. "That's not a gift, sir. That's a loaded weapon." Elliot let out a soft, humorless laugh. "I told him I didn't need a dog," he insisted. "Sent the damn animal here on a private jet. By the time we figured out what we were dealing with, my son had already named him Titan." Clara turned to him slowly. "Caleb named him?" "He was 2, saw him from the window, pointed and said Titan." We laughed. It stuck. She took another sip. "It's a strong name. And now he won't give him up, will he?" Elliot's jaw tightened. "I've tried. After the first attack, I lined up 5 different adoption centers. Caleb cried for a week. Refused to eat. Wouldn't speak." Then you kept the dog, not for business, for your boy." He looked at her, this time fully. "I've tried everything, Clara. Trainers, behaviorists, even a priest once, believe it or not. Nothing worked. They all said the same thing. He's too far gone. And yet, yesterday, I didn't do magic," Clara said, her voice quiet. "He saw something in me. Something broken, maybe. Something he recognized." Elliot nodded once, then looked back out toward the yard. "I don't like owing people, but I owe you, big." Clara shook her head. "I didn't do it for favors. I did it because that boy, he shouldn't carry fear around like a blanket." Elliot didn't answer. He simply turned and went back inside, leaving the door open behind him. Later that morning, Clara was in the laundry room folding linens when Caleb appeared in the doorway, holding a peanut butter cracker in one hand and dragging a small blue blanket in the other. His curls were still mussed from sleep. "Hi," he said, voice small. Clara smiled gently. "Well, good morning, Mr. Sunshine." He walked closer, eyes lingering on the bruise peeking out from under her sleeve. "Does it hurt?" She paused. "It did. Not so much now. I didn't mean to make the toy squeak," he said quickly. "I was just playing. I didn't know he would." "Hey." She knelt down to meet him at eye level. "It's not your fault. Not even a little bit. And I bet Titan knows that too." "Doe, you think he's still mad at me?" "I think he's confused, but he remembers your voice. Dogs don't forget kindness." Caleb chewed on his lip, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled drawing. "I made this." She unfolded it carefully. It was a sketch of Titan, lying under the maple tree, with Caleb sitting beside him. Their names were written in bright red crayon over the top. Clara swallowed hard. "That's real nice, baby. Real nice. Can I give it to him?" Clara hesitated. Then you kept the dog, Not for business. For your boy. He looked at her, this time fully. I've tried everything, Clara. Trainers, behaviorists, even a priest once, believe it or not. Nothing worked. They all said the same thing. He's too far gone. And yet, yesterday, I didn't do magic, Clara said, her voice quiet. He saw something in me. Something broken, maybe. Something he recognized. Elliot nodded once, then looked back out toward the yard. I don't like owing people. May. Clara kept her head down, lips sealed. Let them talk. Let them wonder. None of them knew what it meant to face something violent and still offer your open hand. In the afternoon, the vet arrived. Middle-aged, balding, smelling faintly of aftershave and antiseptic. He examined Titan from a distance, scribbled notes, offered recommendations that had already failed before. No signs of rabies, no infection. High adrenaline, yes, but physically he's sound. Still, I'd recommend muzzling him when staff is present. Or sedation if necessary. Elliot glanced at Clara. You think that's necessary? Clara didn't hesitate. No. It'll only make him more anxious. What he needs is a routine. Boundaries. Consistency. The vet scoffed slightly. You a trainer? No, she said. I just know what it feels like when everyone expects you to snap. Elliot's jaw twitched. We'll go with her plan. The vet looked surprised. Your call, Mo. That night, as the sun dipped low and the porch lights flickered on again, Clara stepped outside with a plate in her hands, 2 boiled eggs, a slice of roast chicken, and half a banana. She walked to the tree, slowly, every movement deliberate. Titan lifted his head but didn't rise. She knelt at a distance and placed the plate down. I'm not here to control you, she said softly. I'm here to understand. She stood, backed away. Titan waited. Then, cautiously, he approached the food. Sniffed. Ate. From the upstairs window, Caleb watched, his small hands pressed against the glass, eyes wide with something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next morning began with a hush. Not the usual sleepy kind that settled over the Whitmore estate like morning dew, but something different. Something reverent. Cautious. As if the walls themselves remembered what had happened the day before and were waiting to see what might come next. Clara stood at the stove in the staff kitchen, flipping slices of bacon while biscuits baked in the oven. The smell of southern breakfast filled the air, comforting, grounding. She hummed softly under her breath, an old hymn her grandmother used to sing while snapping green beans on the porch. Her shoulder ached, but she moved steadily, deliberately, refusing to show pain. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement at the kitchen doorway. It was Caleb, barefoot, still in pajamas, hair sticking up like a dandelion gone wild. In his hand, a small plush dinosaur. He stood silently, watching her. Clara smiled. You hungry, baby? He nodded. She pulled a plate from the cabinet and fixed him a breakfast of eggs, bacon, and 1 biscuit with strawberry jam. As she placed it on the table, Caleb tugged gently at her apron. Can Titan have some bacon? Clara knelt beside him. We don't feed dogs people food every day, but maybe just a little today. A treat. For being brave. Caleb beamed. Later, as Clara stepped onto the back porch with 2 slices of bacon wrapped in a napkin, she saw Titan already awake under the maple tree. His head lifted slowly as she approached, eyes wary but no longer wild. She stopped a few feet away and crouched, laying the bacon on the grass. Morning, Titan, she said gently. Peace offering. He sniffed the air, rose, padded toward the meat with careful steps. His body language had changed, less coiled, more curious. He took the bacon, retreated a step, then sat, chewing quietly. Clara didn't move, just sat on the steps and sipped her coffee. From behind the screen door, Elliot watched the scene unfold. His arms were crossed, brow furrowed, as if trying to make sense of something he'd never seen before. His son had nearly been mauled, and yet there she was, unshaken, and there was the beast, obeying. He stepped outside. Clara turned slightly. Good morning, sir. I should be angry, he said without preamble. She nodded. I'd understand. You threw yourself in front of my child. That's reckless. Sometimes recklessness is all a child has left to count on. He paused at her words, processing them. You didn't just get lucky yesterday, did you? No, Seer. You've done this before. I used to volunteer with a shelter back in Birmingham. Special cases. Abused dogs. Dogs too violent for regular adoption. Most of them weren't mean, they were scared. You know what fear turns into when it ain't treated? Rage. He looked at her more carefully now. And you let that rage hit you full force yesterday. Clara gave a small shrug. Better me than him. Elliot exhaled, rubbed his jaw. Tell me something, he said. Why are you here? Really? You could be anywhere. Doing something safer. Easier. Clara's gaze drifted toward the horizon for a moment. My son passed 6 years ago. Hit by a drunk driver. He was 8. After that, nothing felt easy anymore. Nothing felt safe. But I still knew how to care. I figured if I could pour what was left of me into something good, maybe I'd still have purpose. Silence. Elliot swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you for sympathy, she said. Just context. He nodded. Noted. No. Later that day, the Whitmore house buzzed with the usual background noise of a wealthy estate staff moving about, a landscaper trimming hedges, a delivery truck bringing fresh linens. But inside, the hierarchy had shifted. Clara was no longer just the new maid. She was the woman who stopped the beast. In the laundry room, one of the housekeepers, Diane, approached her with folded arms. Not saying I believe in miracles, she said, but that dog ain't been that calm since he got here. Bies, Clara gave a tired smile. He just needed someone to see past the teeth. You careful, Diane warned. People around here don't like it when things change too fast. That evening, as the sun dipped below the tree line, Caleb wandered outside holding something behind his back. Clara saw him and raised an eyebrow. What you got there, sweetheart? He revealed a small handmade sign, cardboard, colored with crayons. Tit on spot. No kicking, no yelling, only love. Clara knelt beside him, touched the sign gently. You made that for him? He nodded proudly. So he knows he's safe. Her voice caught in her throat. I think he'll know. I think he already does. They placed the sign beside the tree. Titan sniffed it once, then lay down beside it. Later that night, as Clara folded the final towels and prepared to retreat to her small staff quarters, she heard a soft knock at the door. Elliot. He held a small box in his hand. Bandages, he said. For your shoulder. Thank you. They stood in silence for a long moment before he added, I don't trust people easily. I noticed, but I trust what I saw. And my son trusts you. Clara looked at him, not as a billionaire, not as a man afraid of losing control, but as a father doing his best in a fractured world. I won't let him down, she said. He nodded once. Then stay. Not as staff, as someone who matters. She didn't answer right away, but she didn't have to. Her eyes did, and from the porch, beneath the stars, Titan slept peacefully beneath the sign made just for him. Not as a weapon, not as a warning, but as someone finally being forgiven. It was just after breakfast when Clara found Caleb sprawled across the floor of the sunroom, surrounded by a sea of crayons and paper. Shafts of warm light filtered through the tall windows, casting golden beams onto the hardwood. The boy's tongue peeked from the corner of his mouth, his brows furrowed with the kind of concentration only children seemed capable of. Clara paused at the doorway, holding a basket of fresh laundry. She smiled. What you working on, baby? Caleb didn't look up. I'm making a book. A book? He nodded, scribbling fiercely with a red crayon. About Titan, so he knows he's not scary anymore. Clara's heart skipped. She stepped inside and knelt down beside him. You think he's not scary now? Caleb paused. He was. But I think he just forgot how to be nice. People forget stuff sometimes. Mommy used to say that. Clara's chest tightened. Caleb rarely spoke about his mother. She'd passed 2 years earlier after a sudden illness. It was the kind of loss that echoed silently through the halls of the estate, never spoken of, never unpacked, but always present. Clara reached out and gently smoothed his curls. That's a smart thing to say, and a very kind book to make. He flipped the page and began drawing Titan again, this time with a bone in his mouth and a flower by his paw. He likes flowers, Caleb said with certainty. Clara tilted her head. Oh yeah? Yeah. I saw him sniff the ones by the fence yesterday. He didn't eat them. just sniffed. She smiled. Then maybe we'll plant him some. Elliot passed by the open archway just then, paused, and leaned against the doorframe. He didn't say anything, just watched them, arms crossed, a faint crease on his brow. There was something about the way Clara and Caleb interacted that softened the sharp edges of the house. The boy laughed more now, talked more, trusted more. And the dog? The dog watched from a distance but hadn't growled once since the sign went up. Elliot cleared his throat gently. "Clara, when you have a moment, I'd like to speak with you in the study." She nodded, noting the formality in his tone. "Yes, sir." Minutes later, she stepped into the study, a grand room of dark mahogany, leather chairs, and books that probably hadn't been opened in years. Elliot stood behind the desk, staring out the window at Titan, who lay curled beneath the tree. "I read the report from the vet," he said, "and I've been going through the file on Titan's import paperwork." Clara stood patiently, hands clasped in front of her. "He came from a breeder overseas somewhere outside of Doha, supposedly elite lineage, but the file also mentions irregularities, injuries, signs of past trauma." Clara's jaw clenched. "I believe it. I had my legal team dig deeper. There are whispers the breeder used electric collars, starvation cycles, said it made the dogs more loyal." Clara looked away. "That's not loyalty. That's fear dressed in chains." Elliot nodded slowly. "That's why he reacts to certain sounds like Caleb's toy. It mimics the frequency used by shock collars." "No." She looked up at him. "You believe me now? That he's not a monster?" "I never thought he was," Elliot said, softer now. "I just didn't know how to help him." Clara exhaled. "Well, now we do. We give him space, routine, and a reason to feel safe." Elliot studied her for a long moment. "Would you be willing to take point on that?" Clara blinked. "Sir, I want you in charge of Titan's care. Full authority. Whatever you need, supplies, space, time, I'll clear it. Just keep him stable. And help Caleb stay connected." Clara hesitated. "That's a lot of trust." "You've already earned it." She nodded. "I'll do it, but I want Caleb involved, with boundaries, of course. I trust your judgment." That afternoon, Clara and Caleb worked together in the garden bed near Titan's tree. They planted marigolds, daisies, and lavender. Titan's peace patch, Caleb called it. Clara guided his small hands as he dug, careful not to disturb the sleeping dog only a few feet away. "He's not watching us," Caleb whispered. "He is," Clara said gently. "He's just pretending not to." Sure enough, Titan's ear flicked every time Caleb giggled or said his name. After planting, Clara let Caleb set a bowl of water by the flowers. Titan stood slowly, walked over, sniffed the bowl, and without flinching drank. Caleb beamed. "He's not mad anymore." Clara gave him a side hug. "No, baby, he's healing." Later that night, as the estate quieted and dusk painted the sky in soft purples, Clara walked the perimeter of the property, checking that the gates were locked and the grounds secure. It was something she had started doing since the attack routine gave her peace, too. As she passed Titan's tree, she paused. The dog looked up at her but didn't move. She sat beside him, knees folded beneath her. "You're not the only one who's had to learn to be gentle again," she murmured. Titan's massive head tilted slightly, then rested against the ground with a soft grunt. The stars blinked above. Somewhere, an owl hooted in the trees. And in that moment, beneath the weight of loss, beneath the quiet of forgiveness, a boy, a dog, and a woman began something neither of them had ever dared to hope for. Belonging. Sunday morning came with the soft rustle of wind in the pecan trees and the slow hum of gospel music playing faintly from Clara's room. Downstairs, the estate stirred gently, no guests, no business calls, no rush of luxury cars down the drive. It was one of those rare southern days that seemed to move on its own time. Clara stood at the kitchen counter, making peanut butter sandwiches. Not fancy ones. Just the kind her mama used to make soft white bread, creamy peanut butter, and a touch of honey in the center. She made two, one for Caleb, one for herself. Her shoulder still ached from the bruise, but she moved steadily, humming along with the choir's harmony rising from the speaker beside the sink. As she spread the honey, a memory tugged at the edge of her mind. Her son, Isaiah, sitting at their tiny kitchen table in Birmingham, swinging his legs and asking for peanut butter but no crusts, please. Mama. The ghost of his voice slipped into the room like a breeze. She paused. 6 years gone, and it still felt like yesterday. A small hand tugged at her apron. Miss Clara? She looked down and saw Caleb holding a drawing. Another picture of Titan, this time with wings like an angel. The dog floated above a garden filled with flowers, stars, and a giant bowl of bacon. I made this one for your room, he said. Clara smiled through the lump in her throat. Thank you, baby. That's the nicest thing I've been given in a long time. Caleb sat on a stool at the counter and bit into his sandwich. Did you have a dog when you were little? She hesitated, then nodded. We had an old mutt named Leroy. He was part hound, part who knows what. He followed me everywhere, even to school one time. Caleb laughed, crumbs on his lips. Did the teacher get mad? She sure did, Clara said, but Leroy just wagged his tail and sat by the chalkboard like he belonged there. Caleb's laughter turned into a giggle fit, and for a moment, Clara let herself lean into the sound, let herself remember that joy could still live in broken places. Later that morning, Elliot passed through the kitchen on his way to the study. He paused when he saw them, Caleb laughing, Clara sipping her tea, the smell of peanut butter and honey in the air. He didn't interrupt, just stood quietly, letting the image etch itself into his memory like a photograph from another life. Then he turned and walked away. Around noon, Clara made her way outside with a fresh bowl of water and a blanket. The autumn air had cooled just enough to leave a chill on the wind. Titan lay beneath the maple tree, alert but still. His eyes tracked her every step. She set the bowl down, then unfolded the blanket beside him and sat, giving him space. You cold, boy? She asked softly. He didn't respond, but he didn't growl either. She pulled the edge of the blanket closer to her knees and sat still, letting the wind do the talking. Did you have a dog when you were little? She hesitated, then nodded. We had an old mutt named Leroy. He was part hound, part who knows what. He followed me everywhere, even to school one time. Caleb laughed, crumbs on his lips. Did the teacher get mad? She sure did, Clara said, but Leroy just wagged his tail and sat by the chalkboard like he belonged there. Caleb's laughter turned into a giggle fit, and for a moment, Clara let herself lean into the sound. I think you've been grieving too, haven't you? Maybe not a boy, but something, someone. She reached slowly into her pocket and pulled out a small biscuit, a treat the vet had dropped off earlier in the week. She laid it gently on the ground, a few inches away. Titan sniffed the air, inching forward. He took the biscuit, then backed up again, chewing quietly. That's a start, Clara said, her voice warm. Later that day, Clara set up a small whiteboard in the sunroom, an idea she'd had the night before. She wrote Titan's chart in big letters, then drew a row for behaviors: calm, ate well, no growling, followed command. Each time Titan did something right, she let Caleb place a gold star beside the task. By evening, Titan had 3 stars. Caleb bounced in place. He's gonna have more stars than me soon. Clara chuckled. Maybe, but that just means you've got competition. No. As the sun began to set, Elliot approached Clara in the hallway outside the kitchen. Do you do this everywhere you go? He asked. Turn chaos into this? She smiled lightly. Not everywhere, but I try to leave places better than I found them. He nodded. I've been thinking about something. She waited. You ever consider working beyond this house? I mean, consulting. Behavior work. Animals like Titan. You could help a lot of people. Clara's smile faded into something quieter. I tried. Once. Right after Isaiah passed. Got trained. Certified. Even started a small side business. But grief has a way of stealing your energy before your hope. Elliot looked down. I understand that better than you think. She glanced at him. You ever talk about her? Caleb's mom? He stiffened slightly. Not much. It's still hard. Even now. Kids remember, Clara said softly. Even the silence. He looked at her, eyes heavier than usual. I'm trying. I know. No. That night, Clara stood by her window, looking out at the moonlight spilling over the garden. The house was quiet, peaceful. Titan was curled under the tree, paws crossed, nose tucked into his chest. Caleb's angel drawing flapped gently in the breeze, taped to Clara's window, and inside her chest, something loosened just a little. A breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for 6 years. The storm rolled in just past midnight, slow at first, barely a whisper across the fields that bordered the Whitmore estate. But by 1:30, the wind howled like a train on a crooked track, and the first crack of thunder shook the windows hard enough to wake the dead. Clara sat up instantly in her narrow bed, sheets tangled at her feet, heart already racing. For a moment, she wasn't in Georgia. She was back in Birmingham. Huddled on the bathroom floor, Isaiah pressed against her chest, crying into her shoulder as rain leaked through the window frame. But the flash passed. She rose quickly, pulled on her robe, and listened. The power was still on. The old pipes creaked in the walls. Somewhere, a door thudded softly in the wind. Then came the scream, high-pitched, raw. Caleb. Clara bolted into the hallway, bare feet slapping against the cool hardwood. She reached the boy's room in seconds. His door was open, the nightlight casting a soft orange glow across the floor. "Caleb," she called. He was crouched in the corner of the room, arms around his knees, trembling. The sound of wind and rain lashed at the windows, and another roll of thunder cracked above the house like a whip. Clara dropped beside him, wrapping her arms around his small frame. "I'm here, baby. You're safe. You hear me? I got you." He didn't speak, only buried his face in her chest. His little body shook like a leaf. I can't," he whispered finally. "What, sweetheart?" "I can't breathe when it gets loud." She held him tighter. "You don't have to. Just be here with me. We'll breathe together." She began to count out loud, slow, steady. 1, 2, 3. In. 1, 2, 3. Out. Gradually, his sobs slowed, his breathing leveled. She could feel the panic receding like a tide. That's when the growl came from the hallway. Low, deep, and not angry but alert. Titan. He stood just outside the doorway, body tense, eyes locked on Caleb. A flash of lightning lit the room, followed by another boom of thunder, and Titan let out a soft, almost questioning whine. Clara looked at the boy. "You want him to come in?" Caleb didn't answer, but his eyes shifted toward the dog. Clara reached out a hand. "Titan, come." "No." The massive dog stepped forward slowly, pausing at the edge of the room. Then, as if sensing permission, he padded in and lay down across the doorway, his body stretched long, like a living barrier between Caleb and the storm. Caleb's voice was barely audible. "He's guarding me?" Clara nodded. "Always." The three of them sat like that for a long while, child, woman, beast, silent against the storm. Outside, wind whipped through the trees, branches clawed at the roof, and rain hammered the windows. But inside the room, there was stillness. At some point, Caleb fell asleep, his breathing even and soft. Clara gently laid him in bed, pulled the covers over his shoulders, and kissed his forehead. When she turned, Titan was still watching her. "You knew," she whispered. "You heard him before I did." Titan blinked slowly. No growl, no bark, just presence. Clara stepped closer, knelt down beside him. "I don't know what they did to you before. I don't know what made you flinch at every touch, or growl at every kindness. But I know what fear does to a soul, and I know how long it takes to let it go." Titan's eyes followed her as she stood. Then, without command, he laid his head down on his paws again. She returned to her room but didn't sleep. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the lightning in the distance, thinking about the kind of storm that didn't come from the sky. Grief, guilt, the fear that comes in silence, the kind that makes a child hold his breath when thunder rolls, or a woman flinch at the sound of laughter she doesn't feel she deserves. By morning, the storm had passed. The yard was soaked, branches scattered across the lawn. Clara moved through the house, checking windows, wiping down sills, and collecting fallen debris from the porch. As she passed the library, she saw Elliot seated in the leather armchair, tie loosened, a cup of coffee untouched on the table beside him. He looked tired. "Didn't sleep much?" she asked. He shook his head. "I heard Caleb screaming. I got to him," she said gently. "I know. I checked the hallway monitor, saw you with him. And, Titan. Clara waited. He's never let Titan in the room before, Elliot said. Not once. Well, maybe last night they both decided to trust something. Elliot looked at her, expression unreadable. He trusts you more than anyone in this house, including me. Clara stepped forward, choosing her words carefully. Sometimes kids don't trust words. They trust actions. Who shows up when it's dark? Who stays when it's scary? He nodded slowly. You're right. That afternoon, Caleb drew another picture, this one of a storm cloud with a small boy holding a dog's leash. Above them, a rainbow arched across the sky. No words, just color and motion. He taped it to the refrigerator. Clara stared at it a long time, one hand resting over her heart. A drawing, a message, a memory, because healing didn't always come in thunderous waves. Sometimes it came in the quiet. Sometimes it came in the form of a dog lying across a doorway. Sometimes it came in the form of a child, finally breathing easy through the dark. It was a Tuesday evening when Clara realized she had forgotten to eat. The realization struck as she stood over the sink, rinsing the final dish from dinner, the soft scent of lemon soap rising from the basin. Her body was tired in that deep, bone-set way that came not from labor, but from the weight of care of presence. She had spent most of the afternoon managing deliveries, organizing Caleb's homeschooling materials, and checking on Titan, who had spent the better part of the day curled in the garden like a shadow at peace. The household had grown quieter, more observant. People didn't gossip when she walked by anymore. They asked questions, requested help, offered thanks. Clara Johnson was no longer invisible, but the silence had its own weight too, because with every step forward, every crack of light that entered the house, she felt something else watching, not just Elliot, though he had clearly taken to noticing her more, pausing longer in conversation, listening instead of dismissing. Not just Caleb, who had grown more open, more affectionate. No, this presence came from deeper down, in the still spaces where secrets settled. And tonight, that weight sat on her like hunger. She dried her hands, tied off the garbage, and made her way outside for a breath of air. The night was mild. The trees rustled gently above, casting soft patterns across the lawn. Titan was where he always was after sunset, beneath the maple tree, near his patch of flowers. He lifted his head at her approach. Clara sat beside him, close enough to feel the heat of his body. "Did you eat today?" she asked. He didn't answer, of course, but she noticed the empty bowl by his paws. Someone had remembered. She sighed. "Guess we both forgot supper." A beat of silence passed between them. "You know," she said, voice low, "when I was younger, my mama used to say that food made with love filled more than your belly. It filled your soul." Titan blinked slowly. "Well," she continued, "I ain't got much left in the pantry of my soul these days, but I'm trying to restock." Inside the house, a light flickered on upstairs, Caleb's room. Clara smiled faintly. That boy had taken to drawing well past his bedtime lately. His walls were already filling up with pictures: Titan flying, Titan sleeping, Titan and Caleb holding paws like best friends in a children's book. She remembered one of Isaiah's drawings, his last, actually. A crooked house under a smiling sun, and stick figure Clara holding his hand. She had found it folded in his backpack the day after the accident. A sudden wave of nausea swept over her. She stood slowly, brushing grass from her skirt. "Let's get you one more treat, boy." Titan followed her to the kitchen door. She pulled a biscuit from the container marked, "Good boy," and handed it to him gently. He took it without hesitation. Just as she was about to turn off the lights, she heard a voice behind her. "Do you always feed everyone before yourself?" It was Elliot. He leaned against the doorframe, dressed in slacks and a faded t-shirt for once. He looked more like a man than a mogul tonight, tired. Yes, but human. Clara arched an eyebrow. Habit, I guess. He stepped further into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and pulled out 2 containers, roast chicken and baked macaroni from the night before. "Sit," he said, already setting plates on the counter. Clara hesitated. "You want me to sit here, with you?" "It's not a command. It's an invitation." She slid onto the stool. "That's a first." Elliot smirked. I've been accused of worse things than offering supper late. They ate in relative silence at first, the sound of forks clinking against ceramic the only thing between them. Then, slowly, the conversation drifted: weather, childhood meals, favorite dishes. I used to hate sweet potatoes, Elliot confessed. Now I crave them. Funny how time changes taste. Or grief, Clara said without thinking. He paused, fork midair, then nodded. Or grief. They sat with that word for a while. Caleb talks about his mother more now, Clara offered. Little things. Her laugh. Her smell. He didn't for a long time, Elliot said, his voice quiet. I think he was trying to protect me. Clara looked at him. You don't have to carry it all alone. I do, he said, because no one else will. Clara shook her head. That's the lie grief tells us, that we're the only ones bleeding. Elliot looked at her, something shifting in his eyes. Vulnerability, maybe, or recognition. She stood, picked up her plate. Thanks for the supper, Mr. Whitmore. It's Elliot, he said softly. She turned to him, surprised. You've earned the name. Outside, Titan stood at the threshold of the back porch, watching the exchange with those amber eyes that always seemed to understand more than he should. Clara smiled faintly, set her plate in the sink, and gave the dog a soft scratch behind the ear. Then she disappeared down the hall, her footsteps light, leaving behind a room no longer filled with loneliness, but with something tender. And upstairs, in the quiet, Caleb drew another picture. A long dinner table, 3 chairs, 1 dog under the table, and the words written in shaky child's print. Nobody eats alone anymore. By the end of the week, the rhythm of the house had changed. Titan no longer barked at the sound of the gate. He responded to Clara's voice from across the garden. And more importantly, Caleb, once hesitant, withdrawn, had begun to speak with confidence, even laughter. The staff noticed. So did Elliot. But not everyone was pleased. Clara knew when people started whispering behind her back again. Not the scared kind. Not the respectful kind either, but that cold, creeping kind of whisper that slithered through halls and tucked itself into corners. She felt it first at the breakfast counter, when Diane, the housekeeper, placed a tray a little too hard in front of her and muttered, "Funny how quick things change around here." Clara kept her face calm. "Good morning to you too." Diane didn't answer, just walked off with her lips pressed tight. Later, in the laundry room, she overheard 2 junior maids speaking low near the ironing board. "Just saying," one said. "You let one maid talk back to the boss and suddenly she's running the place. Pretending like she's got some degree or something," the other replied. "She was hired to clean toilets. Now she's whispering in Mr. Whitmore's ear like a wife." Clara quietly folded a clean shirt, lips pressed together, heart burning but not from shame, from a different fire. She carried the laundry to Caleb's room, knocking lightly before entering. The boy was sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring with intense focus. His pictures now covered nearly every inch of one wall. Today's drawing showed Clara, Titan, and Caleb sitting under the maple tree, with a rainbow stretching overhead. Above them, 3 words: trust, brave, home. Clara smiled. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Caleb looked up at her, eyes bright. "Titan got 3 stars today." "He sure did. And guess what?" he added, lowering his voice like a secret. "I think he listens to me now too." Clara knelt beside him. "You've been real patient with him. That's how you earn trust." Caleb leaned his head on her arm. "People don't always wait." She stilled. "No, baby, they don't." That evening, Clara was cleaning the side entrance when she spotted one of the junior maids, Amber, sneaking a cigarette behind the hydrangea bushes. She didn't say anything, just nodded and kept walking. But Amber narrowed her eyes. "You think you're special, huh?" she muttered. Clara turned, calm and steady. "No, I just don't hide behind flowers when I'm doing something I ain't proud of." Amber scoffed. "Keep talking. We'll see how long your special treatment lasts." Clara didn't respond. She had no interest in drama. But she could feel it building like a storm behind glass, the resentment, the jealousy, the old habits of a house used to its rules and ranks. And in their eyes, she wasn't staying in her place. Later that night, Elliot caught up with her near the pantry. He looked tired, jacket slung over his shoulder, tie loosened. "You okay?" he asked. Clara didn't pretend. "Some of the staff don't take kindly to change." He sighed. "I've heard things. I've let it go, thinking it would pass. It won't, not without direction." Elliot studied her. "You're right. You always are lately." She shrugged. "I'm not looking to take anyone's place. Just trying to help Caleb. Help Titan." You're doing more than that." His voice was quiet, almost too quiet. Clara stepped back. "I know how this looks to some people. I don't care how it looks," he said. "I care that my son is happy, that my home is finally stable, that the damn dog isn't tearing through walls." Clara folded her arms. "Then you need to say that to everyone." Elliot nodded. "I will." But word traveled fast, and by morning, the whispers had grown teeth. Clara found a passive-aggressive note taped to the cupboard. "Some people forget their role." No name. No signature. Titan growled softly when she read it aloud. "It's okay," she whispered, running a hand along his back. "We know who we are." But it wasn't okay, not really. Because kindness made people nervous. Because when someone rose from where they were expected to stay, others took it as betrayal. That evening, Clara took Caleb outside to plant another flower. The boy held a tiny trowel in his hand, carefully digging into the soil. "Why do flowers make people mad?" he asked suddenly. Clara blinked. "What do you mean?" "Diane said we were making the place look like a circus." Clara knelt beside him, planting her hand over his in the dirt. "Sometimes when people don't understand something, they call it names. But they liked the yard before," Caleb said. "Now they don't come outside at all." Because they didn't plant anything," Clara said softly. "So it doesn't feel like theirs." He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, "Can it be ours?" Clara smiled. "It already is." As night fell, she sat on the back porch with Titan by her feet, Caleb asleep inside. The moon was high, casting silver shadows across the lawn. Elliot came out with 2 mugs of tea, handed her one. "I made some calls today," he said. "Reassigned a few duties, had a meeting with the staff." "Oh," Clara raised her eyebrows. "I told them exactly what I see. That you're the reason this house feels like a home again. That you have my trust. That Caleb sleeps through the night now because of you." Clara sipped her tea. "That'll ruffle feathers." "Let them ruffle," Elliot said. "You didn't come here asking for power. You came here giving grace. And if they can't see that, then they're the ones forgetting their role." Titan let out a soft breath and laid his head on Clara's boot. And for the first time that week, she felt something settle deep inside her chest, not just validation, but peace. It began with a sky too still. The morning air was thick and unmoving, the clouds above swollen with moisture that refused to fall. Clara felt it the moment she stepped outside to water the peace patch, a strange weight pressing on her shoulders, the kind of pressure you feel in your knees when a storm is coming. Titan stood nearby, unusually alert, his ears perked, tail low. He paced the garden slowly, like something was off but he couldn't name it. Clara paused mid-step, hose in hand, and followed his gaze. Nothing, but something. Inside the house, Caleb was finishing his lesson with his tutor. Clara peeked into the study just as he was showing off a drawing of the solar system. His tutor smiled, then gave him a high five before collecting her things. "Miss Clara," Caleb called, "can I show Titan my planets?" "Of course, baby." "Mingsi." He ran off to his room, paper in hand. Clara remained at the doorway a moment longer, her eyes catching Elliot across the hall. He was on a call, his tone sharp, pacing. "Do not let that deal slip through, Victor. I don't care if the board is nervous, this is not the time to flinch." Click. He turned and met her eyes. His expression softened instantly. "Sorry," he said, approaching. "Investor fire, you know how it is." Clara smiled faintly. "I don't, but I know stress when I hear it." "Mal too." He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's been a long week. And I've got meetings stacked until Friday." "Well, we'll keep things quiet on our end," Clara said. Elliot hesitated. "Actually, I was wondering if you'd mind taking Caleb out for a few hours tomorrow. There's a kid-friendly museum in town. I'll have the driver take you both." Clara blinked. "A field trip?" "More like a thank you. You've both earned a break." She paused, then nodded. "He'll love that." May. That night, The air didn't cool. Instead, it grew heavier. Clara sat up late reading by the window. Titan was sprawled on the floor, twitching occasionally in his sleep. Around midnight, thunder rumbled in the distance. She closed her book slowly. The first flash of lightning arrived seconds later, followed by a sharp crack of thunder that sent Titan upright in an instant. He let out a single, low growl, not of aggression, but warning. Caleb. Clara was already on her feet, heart pounding, racing toward his room. When she opened the door, she saw it, the boy curled under his bed, knees to his chest, fists pressed against his ears. He was rocking slightly, mouthing something she couldn't hear over the storm. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Caleb, it's me. I'm here." He didn't answer, just kept rocking. She crawled under with him, pressing her side against his, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You're safe, sweetheart. I've got you." He shook his head. "It's too loud." "I know, but I'm louder." She began humming softly, the same hymn her grandmother used to sing on nights when the roof shook with rain. Titan appeared at the bedroom door, then amazingly walked in and lay down beside the bed, close but not crowding. Caleb's breathing began to slow. "You're not alone," Clara whispered. A few minutes later, Caleb whispered back, "Promise?" "Promise." They stayed like that through the worst of the storm thunder overhead, rain battering the windows. But inside the room, there was only calm. By morning, the clouds had scattered, and the sun returned with quiet gentleness. Clara made pancakes for breakfast, extra syrup, just how Caleb liked them. He sat at the table wearing his favorite blue hoodie, Titan lying nearby. One paw crossed over the other. Elliot entered just as Caleb was describing a dream where he and Titan flew through space. "I was the astronaut," Caleb said, "but Titan was the spaceship." Clara laughed. "Well, he's big enough." Elliot smiled and tousled his son's hair. "Sounds like a good dream." "It was," Caleb said simply. After breakfast, Clara stepped out to check the garden. The flowers had survived the wind, though a few petals were scattered across the grass. Titan followed her, sniffing the earth, occasionally nudging her hand as she worked. She looked up at the sky. That storm last night felt like something else. Titan didn't react, but he stayed close. Back inside, Clara passed the hallway where Diane and Amber stood whispering again. "She's playing house," Amber muttered. "Acting like this is hers." "She'll slip up," Diane replied. "Women like her always do." Clara paused at the top of the stairs. They didn't know she could hear. She exhaled slowly and kept walking. Later that evening, she wrote in her journal, something she hadn't done in years. She wrote about Caleb, about Titan, about Elliot's changing eyes, about the feeling that storms weren't always just about weather. She ended with one line, "The house is still holding its breath, so am I." As she closed the notebook, Titan lifted his head and looked at her. She smiled. "Yeah, I know. We've still got work to do." The house was unusually still that morning. Not quiet still. There was no rush of heels on marble, no clatter of silver trays, no clipped voices echoing through the long hallways. Instead, there was something else, an air of anticipation, like the entire estate was waiting for something to land. Clara stood by the stove, flipping French toast on the cast-iron skillet, the smell of cinnamon and butter curling through the kitchen like a memory. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't thinking about Diane's words or Amber's looks. Not yet. This morning was for Caleb. The boy had been up early, tugging on her sleeve while the sky was still pink. "Can I help make breakfast?" he'd asked, holding a plastic butter knife, like it was Excalibur. She let him stir the eggs and sprinkle the cinnamon. Titan sat dutifully at the kitchen threshold, eyes on the boy, tail thumping lightly every time Caleb giggled. Clara plated the toast, added strawberries and a dash of powdered sugar. Caleb insisted on carrying the tray himself. "I'm bringing it to Dad," he said proudly. Clara blinked. "Your dad?" "Yeah, he's always working. I want to surprise him." She watched as the boy balanced the tray with both hands, his little mouth pressed in concentration. "Be careful with the juice, okay?" Caleb nodded and padded out of the kitchen barefoot. Clara stood there for a moment, unsure whether to smile or brace for something else. Her hands itched with the instinct to follow. But she didn't. Instead, she listened. Upstairs, there was the sound of a door creaking open. Then silence. Then, "Morning, Daddy. I made you breakfast with Miss Clara." A pause. Clara imagined Elliot, startled, still half-shaved, sitting behind his desk or by the window, blinds still drawn. "I helped. A lot." Then a softer voice, Elliot sounding more unsure than usual. "You did?" "Uh-huh. But Miss Clara did the hard parts." Another pause. "Well then, come here." Silence. Then a sound Clara hadn't heard in that house in all her weeks there. A low, warm, surprised chuckle. Elliot Whitmore laughed. Clara blinked hard, then turned back to the sink to wash her hands, pretending the warmth in her chest was just from the stove. Later that morning, Elliot appeared in the kitchen, still in his robe, holding the now empty tray. "Clara," he said. She looked up. He didn't sound like himself, no edge, no weight. "That was incredible," he said. She smiled. "You liked it?" "I did. Caleb did too. I think he felt proud." "He should." Elliot hesitated. "I forgot what that was like, having breakfast with someone who made it with care. It's been a long time since anyone cooked for me without a price tag attached." Clara wiped her hands on her apron. "You're welcome." He smiled again, this time wider, the kind of smile that softened his face, smoothed the line between his brows. A smile that made him look not like a billionaire or a widower or a man haunted by too much silence, but just a man. And Clara felt it, unmistakably. Something shifted. That afternoon, she took Titan for a longer walk across the back fields. Elliot had approved a new training area, open, grassy, with a sectioned fence for safety. Clara brought a rope toy and some obedience tools.